Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week on Moving to Georgia. I'm Sarah Maslowski with KeyPoint Homes Group, and I'm so excited for y'all for today. I have one of my clients that we've actually helped move from across the country is going to be joining us right here with us and talking about what it's like moving from California all the way to Georgia and kind of like what it's like. And he's already been through it all. And so I'm super, super excited about that. And of course, welcome to the live stream. So let us know where you're watching from. Go ahead and put that down into the comments. But as promised, I told y'all a couple weeks ago that I was going to bring on someone who's might be in your shoes or who was in your shoes. They were watching and thinking about making a move, and they did. And so I thought it would be great for us to kind of get a client's perspective and be able to ask them questions directly. So I am going to welcome to the live stream, Pete. Welcome,
Hi.
Pete.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited that you agreed to do this, and I know it's going to be so helpful to so many people. So tell me, y'all been living here in Georgia now 2 years?
Yeah,
All
almost
right.
to the day. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's exciting. And tell me or tell the viewers who are watching where you moved from.
Sure. Yeah. Born and raised in San Francisco proper, the Sunset District, and then moved to a suburb called Vacaville, right between Sacramento and San Francisco, and then came directly from Vacaville to Georgia. So yeah, San Francisco Bay Area, surrounding suburbs, and then directly here.
And so 2 years ago, y'all were thinking about making a move. And what prompted that move or what got you thinking and why Georgia?
Sure. The move was sort of in the middle of a lot of confusing things, including, I lived through COVID and all that, and coastal politics were getting very strange, just way too strange for us. We're more of a smaller, quiet, maybe even conservative family, so we thought it best to go somewhere that better reflected our values, because again, coastal politics can be a little bit extreme for us. So we started to look around the map. We had no specific draw. There was no reason to choose Georgia or Texas or anything like that. We were wide open and really loved Georgia for the terrain, the lakes, the hills, foliage, it's greenery. It's just gorgeous here. So we were really attracted to sort of the outdoor living. And then also right alongside that was more family oriented surroundings, more things for family and that sort of thing.
So you didn't specifically have to move to Georgia, but what other states did y'all choose? And like, how did you end up deciding that Georgia was the one? Like, what was that process like? I mean, obviously
Sure.
some YouTube research was done in that. And what did that look like behind the scenes?
Yeah, great. Well, we knew we had to go. That was step one. Was like, let's get out of California. Things are getting financially weird and politically weird. Let's just get out of here. And then we started putting pins in maps as close to California as possible. So Nevada and maybe Utah and different places, and then thought, well, if friends and family are going to be more than an hour car ride away, it doesn't really matter where we go after that, right? I mean, we then just started looking, and I had been to Georgia, Alpharetta specifically, a couple of times as an old employer's headquarters was there. And I had always loved what I saw on my short visits. I want to get this out of the way too. I find humidity favorable. It doesn't bother me at all. As a matter of fact, I associate it with some positive past memories and stuff of different vacations. So to me, the humidity is, unless it's very bad, everybody knows super bad humidity is bad, but just ordinary humidity daily doesn't bother us. So I think that was a thing that I was prepared for my wife to say, oh no, we're not going somewhere humid, but we both had a positive outlook on humidity. So that kind of opened up Georgia. And I said, well, I had been there a couple of times for work. Why not just explore that? Let's just start there. If we're not going to go a stone's throw away from where we were, if the country's wide open, then I've been there. I had a positive experience. Let's explore that. the more we explored, the more we liked what we saw, and we're sure that that's where we wanted to land.
And so did y'all come for an exploratory visit before you decided to really start house hunting, or what did that look like for you?
Yeah. Okay. So we made the decision in the middle of the strange era of COVID lockdowns and this sort of thing. So it wasn't easy to just up and go visit at the time. So we, thanks to utilities like Google Street View or Apple Maps look around feature, or even YouTube. Obviously, you search YouTube for different areas around, and there's just tons of great footage and people you can reach out to and talk to. There's subreddits you can go to have conversations. We did a lot of that in the months of lockdowns, and it seems like Zillow and Redfin were just constantly open on our phones. And then the more we looked into Georgia, the more we liked what we saw. So we just kept looking and started ruling out other places. Like we would ask ourselves, based on what we've seen so far for Georgia and our goals of, getting out of what might be economically and politically weird coastal politics and stuff, and moving to a place where we might find more family-oriented, type things. The more we looked, the more we found that, and we could rule out other states and go, well, there's really nothing here that we want but isn't here. So it was very easy for us, I think, to look in Georgia and then land there, because we did easily find all of the big things we were looking for.
Yeah. So if you're just joining us, I am interviewing Pete, a former client who moved from California all the way here to Georgia, and it's been exactly in your shoes. So if you have any questions for Pete or about making a move, go ahead and drop those in the comments, and we're going to answer those all throughout the live stream. And I wanted to know, obviously we're talking about what it's like moving from California to Georgia, and you mentioned the humidity, and that is a question that I get all the time from people that are, thinking about making a move here. They just want to know like how humid it is. And for someone that grew up in Georgia, it's really a hard question to answer because all I know is like Georgia humidity and Florida humidity, and I can just compare those, but I don't know. I've never lived in some place where there's no humidity. So talk to me a little bit more about that, and like how much different is it for you?
Yes. Oh, okay. I'll take a minute on this response because I find it very interesting. Like I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area for most of my life, and the temperature there is 74 degrees always. At night, in the daytime, it doesn't matter. It's almost always 74 degrees. Winter, it stays very consistent. And I grew up in the San Bruno, Millbrae Peninsula area where the weather is just gorgeous. Silicon Valley. So the people really rely on that. Now, if you were born and raised in a place like that and have never had exposure to other humidity and that sort of thing, that's the thing I think will get you, is the extreme difference from where you're going, where you've been and where you're going. Just to contrast that a little bit, I moved up to Vacaville, which is between San Francisco and Sacramento. There is some very extreme weather in Vacaville, north of San Francisco, and that is very hot. We would get 106-degree summers. And there's zero humidity. So you get this magnifying glass sunlight, right? That just is really hot, and you have to stay inside. To me, it was easy to trade that for humidity, right? Because extreme weather is extreme weather. You're going to have extreme weather in one direction or another. So if you're from a place that has extreme weather, you should probably expect to trade whatever extreme weather you have there for the humidity, and hopefully you're okay with that. I was totally fine with trading our kind of heat from Vacaville, California, with this kind of heat, which is very different. This is a diffused heat. It's everywhere, even in the shade, it's hot, which is very different than, that direct sun heat that I was used to. But I definitely prefer this. Humidity is not for everybody. In fact, a lot of people we meet say, I love it here, but I can't stand the humidity. And we're sort of like, okay, yeah, some people will not move somewhere because of the humidity. So to me, I've seen quite a bit of that people were not comfortable in humid climates. I would say make sure you are comfortable in humid climates before you come here, because it is not kind of humid. There are some days where you just cannot escape the humidity. So it's definitely something you must consider. And if you're trading one extreme weather for another, hopefully you win in that trade, but some people don't. They just don't like the humidity.
So I helped another family move from California to Georgia, and early on, as I started this YouTube channel and started helping more and more families, it was more and more interesting to me the things that they thought were a lot different living in Georgia versus where they came. And again, as someone that's only lived in Georgia, some of the things I just don't know are different. And they text me during a thunderstorm and they're like, "Hey, is this normal?" And I was like, "Yeah, thunderstorms here are very normal." And
Yeah.
then it didn't realize, or it didn't occur to me, that thunderstorms are not normal in different parts of the country. So was that something that you found surprising or different from where you grew up in or lived in California?
Certainly. Now, to preface that, I have family in Massachusetts. Massachusetts and Georgia weather are very similar in the summertime. Winter's very different, obviously, but I was used to those, afternoon thunderstorms and that sort of thing from visiting family. I have had exposure to that, but my wife not so much. So when we were outside at 3 p.m. Playing ball or grilling, and then 8 seconds later there's a torrential downpour and thunderclaps that rattle your rib cage. She was like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "Yeah." I personally absolutely love extreme weather. I love thunder and rain, and at night I love to hear thunderstorms. So I fit perfectly in here. But again, for those people who have lived in weather that is not extreme, and then you come here, you've just really got to expect a big difference. And thunderstorms, just today, I was outside fixing the fence at 11 a.m. At 11:34 a.m., it was a torrential downpour with thunder. And so, yeah, it just, there's a saying about that, isn't there? Something about you don't like
Yeah,
the
it's like
weather.
if you're unhappy with the weather, just like wait 15, 20 minutes and a new weather pattern will be here.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we experienced here yesterday during 4th of July. So happy 4th, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that. But, the weather was looking really bad yesterday morning. It rained, thunderstorms, doomy, dark and gloomy. And yet, an hour and a half later, the sun was out, and you never would have known that it was torrential downpour in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we rented a boat on Lake Lanier and it was
Oh, nice.
beautiful. And then it started pouring. And she said, "Well, we can get a refund if we go back." I said, "Let's wait 15 minutes and see what happens." And sure enough, 15 minutes later, everybody was back out on the lake and going around. We're just used to it out here,
Yeah.
extreme weather
Um,
breaks.
so I thought it was funny. So there's popular like local moms Facebook groups for people, and a lot of people that relocate here join those Facebook groups. And I saw someone that had recently relocated, and she was like, "Okay, I got the severe thunderstorm alert. I've got my batteries and my candles and everything else ready to go. Is there anything else I need?" And I thought it was funny that they said that because it's just kind of like an everyday occurrence here
Yes.
during the summer, and it's not really something that you hunker down and prepare
Sure.
for. You just go about your normal day in the rain.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep a poncho in your car, maybe, but yeah, that's about as
Yeah,
far as
yeah,
I
that's
go.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll definitely need an umbrella. So if you're just joining us, I am interviewing Pete, a client that I help relocate from across the country from California to Georgia. If you have any questions at all about making a move, put those in the chat. Or if you want to ask Pete a question about what his experience has been like from someone that's not from here, that recently moved here 2 years ago and has been living in Georgia for 2 years, make sure that you put those in the comments, and we'll make sure to pull that up and get your question answered. So I would love to know is, now 2 years into having made the move from California to Georgia, is there anything that you wish you would have done differently or that you would go back and do differently?
Yes. Without being disparaging, can I tell the story of how we
Yes,
Okay.
please. Please do.
Okay. Months and months before we made the move or even decided where to go, we YouTubed the heck out of every city, right? We YouTubed the heck out of it. And when we YouTubed about Georgia, Sarah came up very quickly. So for months before we moved here, we watched Sarah. But then the realtor I had selling my house in California recommended a realtor here. So we went with that. Well, the realtor we had here, we didn't work out. The relationship didn't work out. And I was watching one of Sarah's videos. I told my wife, I said, she has her stuff together. How come we don't just call her? She goes, "Why don't you call her?" I called Sarah and she happened to be available. I was a little starstruck. I was like, "Gosh, we've been watching you for months on YouTube and now you're our realtor." It was great. And our first offer, by the way, got accepted. And it was a previous realtor, 25 offers were not accepted. Sarah, the first one, was accepted. I love that story and the way we came about meeting you. But that, going back to what I would have done differently is probably had a better relationship with the realtor, or probably would have vetted the credibility of the realtor that I was going with maybe a little bit more. I was very trusting. I had a referral. I said, okay, great. And then that really didn't work out. So I would say, try to find a realtor that you have a rapport, or at least somewhat of a relationship with. And because you have to do a lot of relying on your realtor, and there's got to be a lot of trust there. So that's one thing I wish I had done differently, has been more astute about my relationship with the realtor before I got started. I landed in the right place, but not without much trial and tribulation.
Yeah, that's really hard too, because there are so many real estate agents out there. There's a lot of real estate agents out there making content. There's a lot of real estate agents that will refer someone else that they know or that they think they know. And, our industry is such that there's kind of like a low barrier of entry. And it is hard to vet out a real estate agent. So I definitely, understand the plight of that, going through that process.
I'm finding that true with most of trades and contractors too, that it is much more difficult here, in my opinion, to like if I have a project and I ask people for bids, I want to collect 2 or maybe 3 bids before I make a decision. And it's been impossible so far to get to a 3rd bid on just about anything, whether it's pouring concrete or hanging drywall. I find it pretty tough. And maybe that's for a great reason, that there's so much, expansion going on, that everybody's busy working, doing that kind of stuff. But I do find a little bit more difficult to find a reliable, service or product.
Have you experienced, like, you'll call someone out to give a quote, they'll come out and they'll measure, do whatever, but then they never give you the quote? Has that happened to you?
Oh, yes.
It's so frustrating. It's like, why did you waste your time coming out here and spending resources, and then you're not even going to go through the effort to actually get the job? That's happened to me, and it's so frustrating.
And that's if you can get them there to begin with, right?
Yeah.
You get lucky to get them there to begin with. But then you're like, oh, good, I'm so glad I got somebody. But then they just ghost you. So probably because of all the expansion, everybody's very busy. I think that's a good problem to have, but be prepared. It's tougher to find somebody.
Yeah, definitely rely on, recommendations from neighbors and things like that. Obviously, I have good recommendations that I can recommend from people that have been vetted out and ran through some clients and things like that. Because trust me, if I get a bad review, then I quit recommending someone. So that is something that you can rely on. What are some of the surprising things that you've learned about living in Georgia, or things that you didn't even think of, and then you're here and you're like, oh, that's surprising?
Sure. Yeah. Well, one of them for me was like cuts of meat. Just something that simple is
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm interested to hear about this.
Yeah, one of my favorite ones to slow cook is tri-tip. But most people over here have never even heard of tri-tip. They're like, what the heck is that? In California, it's at every Costco, it's at every grocery store, it's the cut, but here I have to go to a butcher to get it. So that was surprising how regional food differences, I'm a big food person, right? Regional food differences are, there's still a few things where like, gosh, I sure wish we could get that again, or, something like that. That was something surprising, fairly small. But I'll tell you the one thing that caught me by surprise, that is probably one of the things I like most, is school buses. We've got 2 school-age kids, and we didn't even realize until we got here what a convenience having a yellow bus come to your door and pick up your kids and take them to school. Nothing like that exists where we came from.
So how do kids get to school where you're from?
However you get them there.
So the school system does not offer public transportation?
No.
Okay, so this is blowing my mind, because I just thought that was something that everywhere you lived, the school system had to provide that.
And I thought everywhere you lived, you had to get your kids to school, however you got them to school. But
wow,
it's very surprising to see that you sign them up and the bus comes every morning, and it's incredible. Anybody in California, I highly recommend it. Kids, just that.
Because how much time does that save you too? Like, just like in your everyday life, like that's got to save 30 minutes there, 30 minutes back, like an hour every day?
It's incredible. After we had lived here for like 3 months, I was here in the morning by myself going, I'm not taking anybody to school. I don't have to. It's just, yeah, it's one of my favorite things. Love it.
Wow. I had another client from California, they told me that it was surprising, the color of the fire hydrants, that here they're
Oh,
silver.
okay.
I don't know if you've picked up on that or noticed that difference or that has stood out to you.
They're also built differently too. They're sort of the old-fashioned ones you would see like in a cartoon that a dog is in, like the fire hydrant. Where I'm
Right.
from, they're like cylindrical and different. There's little differences like that too. Hot dog buns. Where I'm from, they cut them this way. Here, they cut them that way. It's little things like that that are interesting and mostly humorous differences.
I hear your dogs in the background. It must be dinner time.
Oh no, the kids just got home, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, my dogs, they're always barking right now. So,
Dinner, huh?
for the past almost 6 months, we've been going through a renovation and we've been living downstairs in our basement, which is where this room is. And so typically like the struggle has been like keeping my dogs quiet as they're like just outside the door. But thankfully we finished our renovation and we moved upstairs last week. So
No,
um,
nice.
now my dogs don't have to be like right outside the door as I'm doing these live streams.
Well, speaking of that, that's another thing I learned since moving to Georgia is spotting the drop ceiling. When you spot the drop ceiling, you know
Yeah.
somebody's in the basement. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I never crossed my mind before that. A drop ceiling is a drop ceiling. But yeah, when you see that grid, somebody's probably in the basement.
Yeah. And one thing that's surprising or that people ask is like, why are there drop ceilings? And so you'll see a combination or either drop ceilings or you'll actually see like sheetrock. The downside to sheetrock, though, is that if you ever need access to plumbing or leaks or anything like that, you're having to like cut into the drywall and do a drywall repair. Whereas a drop ceiling, you just pop it out, move it over, and then you have access to your plumbing and everything that's underneath because all of your plumbing is in between the basement and the main level of the house.
I just started that process. I'm finishing the basement, putting ceiling tiles. I decided to do sheetrock on the ceiling. It was a
Okay.
month
It
long.
definitely looks cleaner and
Yeah,
better.
cleaner, you get a little bit more height. But
Yes.
like you said, if anything goes wrong up there, you're tearing out the wall. It's a major repair as opposed. And I like the possibility of like moving a tile out of the way and throwing a cable across the room in case you need to run a wire for something. That's all very attractive. But yeah, it was the pros and cons of height, and you got to factor in all those things. Everybody will have different reasons why they go the way they go. But yeah.
Yeah.
I think, and also the drop ceiling was very intricate. A lot of a lot of labor to get that thing done. Whereas those panels are much faster.
Yeah, that's true. Shell asked the question, how are the kids adjusting to living in Georgia? What do they think about it?
Ooh, we absolutely love it. We may be bad people to ask because our experience is almost 100% positive. The kids absolutely love it. Uh, there is a whole different way about people in the South as compared to people in, say, downtown San Francisco. We've learned so much about just deference and respect to not just elders, but everybody. It's a very different thing here, and the kids are delighted by it because that's more how we are, is more family oriented, and we give that deference and respect, and so to see others around us that way has been just so pleasant for all of us. Teachers have taken a personal interest in both of my kids, talking to them about their work at school and encouraging them in other ways that we're just not used to. In a very overpopulated area like where we came from, it was very difficult to get, personalized help with school and stuff like that. But the kids are delighted to find that sort of thing. One more thing is like we came to a subdivision. I just watched a video on subdivisions earlier today, and we everything he said was, I was nodding along. But we moved in a subdivision, and the kids can walk a block and a half to the pool. And they've made so many friends at the pool of the subdivision that are right here in the neighborhood. It's just been an extraordinary experience for them all around. Of course, they miss the friends they left. That we can't make that easier. We just can't. But they've got all new friends now, and they're growing through it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if you're just joining us, I have Pete on with me, and Pete made the move from California to Georgia 2 years ago, almost to the day.
Yep.
And so we're talking with Pete about like what it's like and kind of answering your questions that you may have, asking, getting answers from someone that's not me. So that obviously I've only lived in Georgia, so I don't know what it's like living in other places. And Pete, one of the questions that we get, or maybe people comment on whenever they come for their visits, is they'll say, gosh, everyone is just so nice. And the Southern hospitality thing is really true. Do you really feel that way? I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but is it really that markedly different than out in California?
Absolutely. In my experience, I have noticed a huge difference in things like going through a grocery store. I'll either see people I've met and know from my smaller, community, or just start talking to people about things. This is something I could do anywhere, but it doesn't feel like that was encouraged or invited where I came from, but for whatever reason, I feel that it's more encouraged or invited here. Why do I feel that way? Because people will talk to me out of the blue about things that have nothing to do with the two of us. We're strangers, but they'll talk to me out of the blue. And that also has led to me making an observation that I feel like people have. I don't know how I could possibly back this up, but it feels as though there is a higher level of respect for personal freedom here, as opposed to where I came from. It was felt tense a lot because people were less, in my opinion, tolerant of personal freedom and choices like that, right? So here we're just seeing so much different thought that's not only tolerated but encouraged. You can discuss things that are contentious with people and be open about those things. So I just feel like there's a lot more respect for personal freedom here as opposed to where. And don't forget, the place I lived is a very extreme. San Francisco is a very extreme part of the country to live. So coming from there and moving to Georgia was just very different. Very different there.
Yeah. I recently went to up in northern Michigan. It was my first time ever being there. And I was with some other agents. It was at a real estate conference, other agents from across the country. And I was eating lunch with some agents that were from Tennessee. And the waitress came by and placed our order and came back a few times. And I looked at the agents from Tennessee. I was like, she's a little rude, right? And there were two other agents with us from Michigan. And they're like, how is she rude? And I was like, well, she's just not being very nice and attentive. And that's not what I'm used to. And they're like, you're not? Like, this is normal. And so it became apparent that, like, it's just regional differences in how you talk to people and how you greet people and the level, I don't know, what you do. And it just dawned on me. I was like, oh, okay, that's not what we're used to. And they're not being rude. That's just how their culture up here is.
Yeah.
And that was interesting to me.
Yes. Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I tend to err on the side of courtesy over culture. Even if other people aren't courteous, I'm going to be, and I hope for that from others too. But like you said, sometimes you just don't get that. You get the bare minimum.
So if you have any questions for Pete or me about making a move to Georgia, make sure that you put those in the comments, and we will make sure to answer those. I want to know, Pete, has there been anything that you have not liked about being here in Georgia?
Sure. Yeah.
For the worst.
Yeah, it may be just specific to my small area, but I moved to the town of Beaufort, and the Mall of Georgia is here. So just a couple blocks from my front door is chaos. It's a lot of traffic and very difficult to get around and that sort of thing. So I can't really blame. I mean, that could be in any city near any mall, but I do feel like this town was built for a certain number of people, and now that number of people is way over what it was. So yeah, roads, there's a lot of one-lane roads and stuff that get very congested. So I caused that problem. I'm well aware of that I'm one of the reasons that exists. But that is difficult. That has become difficult for our town. We've been here 2 years. We're thinking about moving even further out into the suburbs. Even further away from Atlanta to quieter area. So that was not positive, but I can't blame that on this area. Just maybe I would say look into that more than you might have. Wherever you're going, wherever you plan to go, maybe ask some people on the next door or something about how, because there are people who are very vocal about how things were and how things are, and they're mad about all the traffic and things like that, as you know, on sites like Nextdoor and stuff. So yeah, I realize I'm part of the problem, but I'm also living in it as well. So
yeah, and just about every video I make, there's a local person that will comment and say, tell people stop moving here. We're full. We don't want any more. There's too much growth. There's too much this. And so, yeah. Mindy here commented that she's a Georgia native relocating back at some point, and she says a lot has changed since she left in the late 2002. And yeah, that is true. It's grown so much.
We all escaped California finally, but here we are. Yeah, I'm sorry. I definitely am part of the problem, but yeah.
Do you feel like anything is worse, like in terms of like getting your driver's license or dealing with the government entities here or processes, anything like that you feel like is like, wow, they're so slow in Georgia, they don't know how to do this stuff?
Oh gosh, no. In fact, quite the opposite. The DMV took me, I don't know, 13 minutes. Registering is even first. That's not even speaking of the expense of doing these things. Registering a car here is tax plus $20 a year, I think. But where I came from, it was, the yearly fee had a comma in it. It's just amazing the differences in cost of living and government fees, property taxes, all that kind of thing. But I find the government buildings, I got carry license, driver's license, had to do several things for the house, but it all went really well. It all seems to go very smooth, and I'm treated kindly and that sort of thing. Just something I'm not used to from where I'm from. I'm used to things being way over congested or overcrowded, and a lot of other barriers and things that are frustrating that I don't see here. So it's been very pleasant. Anything I've gone to have processed has been very quick and very easy. And remember, I had to rent 2 places here. I've had to do quite a bit, and people will pick up the phone here. I wasn't used to that coming from San Francisco area.
Yeah. So you bought 2 years ago, and it was kind of like at the height of the pandemic craziness. The housing market was super competitive. The benefit, though, is that the interest rates were really low whenever you purchased your house. And yet, you're having to be really competitive to win a home. Now, here we are 2 years later, home prices are still pretty high and interest rates are also high. So kind of like that affordability factor for some people has kind of withered away a little bit. And so whenever they're analyzing making a move, they're really kind of factoring that in. And so I'm just curious, if you, knowing what you know now, if you had to wait 2 years and you were kind of facing that same decision that you were facing 2 years ago, do you still feel like it's worth it? I know that's a very personal decision and people have their own set of circumstances, but just in general, would you make the move again, even if you had to spend a little bit more for a house or pay a higher interest rate to do that?
Yeah, it's interesting because we sort of, I would do it again. First of all, I'm very satisfied with the way it went, but it went a little bit differently than we expected. We sort of trapped ourselves now, right? Because we bought when it was very affordable, and now the value of the house is way higher than where we bought it. And you might go, oh, good, our house is appreciating in value, but that means everything else around it is too. So our options are very limited now, with the prices being higher in some areas and stuff like that. So even though it's great that our value has appreciated so much, it is difficult that now to relocate or to move is tougher because all the prices have gone up. So that, but I don't think I would have changed the time. Well, 2 years earlier would have been nice, right? It was here two.
Right. Yeah. We could always go back and get those prices.
Yes. Yeah. But because we have friends who moved even a year before we did, that we met, and their prices are 30% or 40% lower than what we paid even. So yeah, timing, maybe we were a little bit off, but it has been. I don't know. We were hoping that we could live here for a bit, sell, and then move up. But the prices have all kind of stayed steadily high, so we're just going to stay put for a bit, I think.
Yeah. So the predicament kind of that y'all are in right now is a predicament that a ton of sellers are in. It's really kind of like why the housing market is so why home prices haven't come down is because there's so many sellers that otherwise would maybe want to sell and move to a different location, different size home, that sort of thing. And yet they have a really great interest rate. And I think I saw a statistic that said like between 85 and 90% of people that own a home have an interest rate below 6%. And so that is incredibly where right now you're looking at an interest rate of 6.5%, 7% in some cases. And so, you know, a lot of people, when they're weighing the pros and cons of moving or selling their house, that there's a lot of more cons when it comes to expenses that are outweighing those pros. And so they're kind of like you, and they're like, well, we'll just sit around and we'll wait a little bit longer. And so that's why we have such incredibly low inventory, and it's keeping home prices pretty steady and increasing, especially here in the metro Atlanta area.
And not to mention the peril and availability of like trying to get movers if you need movers, or even pods are limited. It's another thing I didn't think that would be so difficult is getting all that infrastructure together to get your stuff moved from one side to the other. If you need help, if you don't need help and you can pack up your own thing, that's one thing. But if you need movers or pods or some kind of storage like that, get those early, start those conversations early. That's something I wish I did start those conversations earlier. It costed a lot of money to get that house moved. I guess because of the spike in everybody needs it right now, or everybody needed it the last 2 years, it became difficult to get those services.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that about my dogs not barking, but you can probably hear them barking because they're outside in the backyard. This is the time of night where deer come out every single evening, and they're like in our backyard. They are unfazed by my dogs barking. They like will stare at them and keep eating whatever they're eating. So I'm curious, what animals have y'all been surprised about here in Georgia that might be different, animals or bugs?
Sure. Okay. Bugs are nowhere near as bad as I've heard other people describe, or that we were expecting. We have mild mosquitoes where we are here in Beaufort. They're mild, but they're here. Fireflies are beautiful, rising up out of the ground at nightfall.
And so I will say that's unique to North Georgia, because I grew up in South Georgia and we do not get fireflies down in South Georgia. And so you have to be kind of like above the gnat line. I guess the climate of the weather has to be cool enough where they can survive. But I remember coming up as a child to visit my grandparents in Marietta, and catching the fireflies was just magical.
It is, yeah. It's really an incredible experience, especially if you never lived in a climate that could support that. Yeah, just see snakes. There's a lot of snakes. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about snakes, but there are a lot of snakes. We've educated ourselves on snakes, so that once we got over the education hump, we feel a lot better about it. But at first, any snake you see is frightening, right? It's like, what is that? It looks dangerous. But once you educate yourself a bit, or once we educated ourselves a bit on those different types of species and the good ones, right? There's really good snakes that keep the population of rodents down, which we like. I mean, do you want to trade snakes for rats? I don't know if you want to do that.
Right.
But yeah, there's good snakes. And then we have not seen any bad snakes. We only see the good ones. So snakes were a little bit surprising, but yes, the deer, coyotes, we hear coyotes in the distance, or I'm assuming they're coyotes or some other kind of howling animals. We love all that. We did something we never expected we'd do, but we've got bird feeders all through the backyard now, because we just love all the different kinds of birds. Got a big book next to the window with the binoculars. It's just fun to check out all the different wildlife and birds and that sort of thing. But that's been such a welcome surprise, is just being surrounded by such beauty.
We had some clients recently moved from Utah, and she mentioned recently in her Instagram story, she was telling people from back home about how different the birds were here and what a surprise that was. And that's not something that I ever thought about. I was like, oh yeah, I guess birds would be a lot different here. But another thing that tickled me that she posted was that she said it was very surprising that anytime she takes something out of the refrigerator, like a jar of jelly, how it just instantly gets condensation drops on it.
Yes,
and how she didn't deal with that problem back home in Utah. And I was like, what, really? Like, I just thought that's how, things are whenever they come out of the refrigerator. I didn't realize in different parts of the country that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And was that surprising to you, or does that happen to you out in California?
No, no, it was. In fact, I just experienced it today, putting something out and feeling as though it had already melted after it's only been out of the fridge for like 2 minutes. And ice cream is like that too. If you get an ice cream cone on a really humid day, that humidity really pushes in there and gets it melted fast. So the
Yeah,
kids
yeah, you have to
down
eat
their
it
arm.
fast.
Yeah, yeah. Wasn't used to that, but yeah, those are fun little differences.
Have you had boiled peanuts yet?
Okay, yeah, let's talk about this boiled peanuts. Yes, I was at Margaritaville and there was a boiled peanuts truck, and I got myself a cup of boiled peanuts. Can I describe them? I'm just going to describe it.
Go for it. Yeah.
They open the pot and it looks like mud because peanuts have been stewing in this pot. I think for something like 12 hours. I think,
Yeah.
and the dirt from the peanuts colors the water and stuff. And so it really they take a scoop and it looks like mud. They put it in a cup and hand you the cup. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to try this. And I just sort of took the soft wrapper apart, and inside is the peanut, and I eat it. To me, it just tasted like bland mashed potatoes. That's how I describe the bland mashed potato. That's what the peanut tasted like. I had about 10 of them, and I thought, this is just not for me. I'm trying. I like eating. I'm trying, but it just wasn't for me. I couldn't get into it.
See, I think they kind of taste like a edamame.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Is that a good comparison?
Uh-huh.
It's like a brinier, mushier edamame.
Yeah. Not. Edamame is fresh. It pops green, but this is the opposite. It's like the bizarro edamame. Yeah, it's not fresh. It doesn't feel. It's just the water.
So now that you've described it so eloquently, this is going to sound really gross, but I think the best thing to do with boiled peanuts is to like suck the briny juice out of the peanut and then crack it open and then eat the peanut. But now you're describing all that dirt and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just sucking up all that dirty peanut water.
I'm going to try it again. I'm going to take your advice. I'm going to give boiled peanuts another try.
You have to have a Coke with it too. I feel like a Coca-Cola is the classic, not a diet, not a zero. You got to have like the classic. Like that's a great combination.
Okay, cold Coke and boiled peanuts are coming up this summer. I'm going to try it again, and I'll text
One
you.
more time.
Yeah.
What about grits?
Love me some grits. Absolutely love them. Here, I have had, those little breakfast places or brunch places that give you, oh man. Really enjoyed grits, and also chicken and waffles. That's not something that's huge where I'm from. Excellent. But I have found it difficult, though, moving from San Francisco to Georgia. I have found it difficult when I get visitors. They say, what's the local flavor? Take me somewhere. What do you, there aren't peaches everywhere. Like you might think, right? So where do you bring somebody? And barbecue always comes to mind, right? But barbecue is one of the most challenging things to do in a restaurant. You just hard to get good barbecue in a restaurant. So I don't know. I have trouble impressing people with the local flavor when they come, unless I make it myself. Yeah, I'll smoke something and serve them myself. But it's just it's kind of hard to represent the local flavor with a particular cuisine or place to go.
Yeah, there's some like local diner-ish Southern cooking style places, but it's not typically like someplace you want to go for dinner. It's more like a lunch place, or it's not something that's going to like impress locals, but it will have like the local flavor. And yet there's not very many restaurants. Yeah, I could see where that would be challenging. And I see that too. Mindy asked the question, is there still like a bidding war situation like 2 years ago, or has it at least slowed a little bit? So that's a great question. And yes and no is the answer. And so what we're seeing in today's market is that the best houses that photograph really well, that are in good condition, and that are priced well are still getting multiple offers. The thing that's different than how it was 2 years ago is that 2 years ago, homes were getting like 10 plus offers. Now, if we're in a multiple offer situation, we might be up against 4 or 5 offers. And some of those offers are going to be contingent upon the buyer selling their house. And so it's a little bit easier to compete against those types of multiple offer situations. And even when there are multiple offer situations, you're not having to like go super over asking as what you were having to do 2 years ago. And on the flip side, there's a lot of somewhat opportunity in the market right now. Sometimes we have sellers that still really overprice their house. And so sometimes like those are homes that you can really negotiate on, or sometimes a house just needs a lot more cosmetic updating, or they don't have the best photos, and therefore it's not getting as much attention online. And so you can really negotiate with those sellers a little bit more. Whereas even those houses 2 years ago were selling for multiple offer situations over asking. So that's kind of like the huge difference between now and then. Yeah.
I'll say also the whole photo thing. That was one thing I found quite remarkable. Was after months and months of saving properties on either the Zillow or the Redfin, and looking through the photos and zooming in as best you can, it was very different standing in those places. The way they smell. I'm not saying they smell bad, but
Yeah.
the way they smell and the way they're situated. It was just a completely different visceral experience when I was standing there as opposed to looking at those photos. I have heard many stories about people buying, properties or something like without ever actually being there. But for me, that would have been devastating. I really needed to see this to understand some of the very big differences between West Coast and East Coast. Just the way houses are built and the way they're situated on hills and stuff. Just you really have to be there to see. No matter how great the pictures are, it just doesn't tell the whole story, in my opinion.
Yeah. Occasionally we'll work with buyers who will buy a house without ever having come to see it. And it's so scary.
Yes.
Like I get so nervous whenever they actually do come, because I'm like, oh God, are you still going to like it? Because we try to be super, super honest and be the eyes, ears, and nose on the ground. But that's never going to be a replacement for your judgment, how you're personally going to feel about a space. So yes, I strongly agree with that. You have to come out and visit. You have to put boots on the ground and actually see it, because there are just a lot of little nuanced differences between how houses here versus where you're coming from.
Yeah, what we did was we rented Airbnb for it ended up taking us 60 days, but we promised ourselves that we would, thoroughly look at every property we were interested in and make the best decision for us. So that was something we hadn't planned on, but we're really glad that we spent some time, like you said, on the ground and really experiencing not only the local, flavor, but going and seeing these potential properties for ourselves. Because there were so many things where we would be driving there going, this is it. Look at these pictures. This is amazing. And as soon as we got there, we just knew it wasn't. It's just really interesting the way that worked.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you will know whenever you walk into a home if you're getting that feeling or if you're not.
Yep.
Yeah, and it feels good to get that feeling when you have that feeling. It gives you the confidence of knowing that the offer and the money that you're going to spend is worth it.
Yes. Yeah, it was funny. This was our 25th, I think our 25th home that we looked at. And before this home, there had been no knowing glances at one another. But when we got to this house, we were sort of walking through the house opposite directions. And as soon as we saw each other, we both nodded. Like it was the first time where it was obvious to both of us that we knew this is the one. And with your help, we got it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, Pete, thank you so, so much for joining me and letting me ask you all the questions and for sharing. I know that a lot of people are going to watch this and get a lot of value out of it. So thank you so, so much for sharing your experience. And of course, if you're thinking about making a move, make sure that you reach out to me. My contact information is directly below this video. And I work with clients just like you that are watching and helping you make the move here to Georgia. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you do that. And I'll see you on Sunday. We drop a video every single Sunday about moving to the area. And then we are live every single Wednesday, just about. I won't see you next week because I'm going on a much needed vacation, but I'll be back on schedule whenever I get back from vacation. So I look forward to seeing y'all, and let me know if I can help you. Thanks.